Alright, welcome everybody. It's been a little while, but welcome to MandoLessons Live. This is episode 20. I've done 20 of these things. I've been gone for a couple weeks, but it's great to see a lot of familiar faces, or names I should say, in the chat. Let me know if everything's coming through alright, in sync, loud enough, all that sort of thing. I can tinker a little bit if it's not, but I think it should be better than ever. I've been working on it a little bit this morning. Hi from Rainy, Oregon, Charlotte, Saskatchewan. Awesome, thanks for joining in. Recovering Bassist says, tell us about your trip. Yeah, so I was gone for 3 weeks. I went to Ireland and Sweden. I had a blast. The weather was amazing. Played a lot of good music with a lot of new friends and a couple of old friends as well. The cone on your shift is melting. Oh, shirt. Yeah, I get the... Yeah, the cone on my shirt is melting a little bit. I like it. I'll deal with that after the show. Yeah, so I went and played. I actually played some old time music first. I met some new Irish friends who are really into American old time music, and they're great musicians. So played a bunch of music with them, and then ended up playing a lot of Irish music for the rest of the time in Ireland. Came back. I haven't spent a whole lot of time learning the tunes there that I heard, but I recorded a lot of them. I've got a big long list of tunes to look through and learn. I'm looking forward to doing that once I get a little bit of time, but I'm still sort of trying to catch up from being away. Then I went to Sweden. I didn't get to play too much Swedish music, unfortunately, but I visited an old friend and met another old friend kind of unexpectedly, and played a little bit of Bluegrass. There was an old time night. I was in Stockholm on a Thursday night. Or no, Friday night? Thursday night. And there was a great Bluegrass get-together there. It was a really fun time. Met somebody that enjoys MandoLessons. It was great to meet up. So yeah, it was a great trip. The weather was awesome. We didn't get any rain in Ireland. I was expecting it to be rainy because that's what I hear about Ireland, but instead I got sunburned. So that first tune that I just played there was what was that called? Oh, it's called The Bruckless Drowning. It's a tune that I had heard in the States, but I heard it played in Ireland and was like, oh yeah, I gotta learn that tune. So I kind of I remembered that one. I sort of knew most of it, but that one stuck with me. And then the second tune I played was a great Irish tune called Anthony Frawley's. I don't think either of those are on the website, but I will hopefully put them up there at some point. All right, we got more people coming in here. Good morning from Saskatchewan. Oh, I already said Saskatchewan. How popular is the mandolin in Ireland and Sweden? It's a good question. It's hard to say exactly. I saw a couple mandolins in Ireland. It's definitely not one of the main instruments. It's more fiddles and whistles and flutes and guitars and bazookies. Let's see what else did I see? Some pipes, concertinas. I was in concertina country, Clare, Ireland. So I saw a lot of concertinas, a lot of button accordions, which is always good. I'm working on button accordion myself, so it's good to see people really know how to play them. And then in Sweden, I think they're somewhat popular. The Bluegrass Jam that I went to had 2 mandolin players. There's some amount of mandolin in traditional Swedish music, but again, it's not. I think maybe like the States, like a lot of people play the mandolin in the States, but also you're going to run into a lot of people who don't know what it is or think it's a ukulele or a little guitar, things like that. Hello from Southern California. Awesome. Thanks for joining in. Isla Man, great to see you. Meet anyone from G2 in Sweden. I don't know what G2 is. But, so I guess I don't know if I met them or not. Did I get any videos of me playing in groups over there? I did not. I'll look through my photos and post some. I've posted a couple pictures on the MandoLessons Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, you can check that out, and I'll post some more over there. I still need to sort through. I had to upload all my videos to the cloud, so I still need to get them back down and look through them because I was running out of space on my phone. But yeah, I'll look through, and if I find anything share worthy, I'll be sure to share it. If you're not already, like my Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, that's the best way to kind of see that sort of stuff. I'll try to post some pictures over there. Connell's got a question from Alabama. I was wondering if what I do is a bad habit or not. I'm pretty new to mandolin. I've started resting my right hand below the bridge when I'm picking. Not necessarily. What you want to do, what I tend to do, and the word I tend to use is brush. So, rather if I totally rest my wrist below the bridge, it kind of, you notice it locks up my elbow, so my elbow isn't free to move, and all the movement needs to come from my wrist. But what I do is I kind of brush lightly below the bridge. That way my elbow can move, my wrist can move. It keeps everything nice and loose. But I also have that little contact point where it's just kind of just lightly resting or brushing behind the bridge, because it is, it is a little bit of a kind of a physical feeling that lets you know where your right hand is. Mike says, welcome back. Thank you. Great to be back from Nashville. Lynchburg, Tennessee. G2 is a bluegrass band. I don't know G2. I'll have to check them out. Recovering Bassist says, I seem to have a bad habit of the pick tapping the fretboard a lot when I'm digging in. Sounds like a woodpecker all of a sudden. I know that sound. Yeah, I think, some people just play with that sound. And you can hear it when they play. It's not, it's sort of personal preference. I'm not a huge fan of it myself, and I know the sound. I do it sometimes, but I've got this sort of shorter extension. A lot of people hear that more if they have kind of the longer Florida extension on their mandolin. But with shorter, some people will get the extension scooped out, so it's lower, and you lose the frets, but there's really not much going on up there anyway. But yeah, you can also just kind of work on it as part of your technique to figure out how to really dig in musically without physically digging the pick in too much farther. There might be something you can do with your right hand technique to kind of mess around with that. But I think for people who aren't familiar with that sound, I'll play like you get that sort of sound. Yeah, so you'll play around with it. If it's really bugging you, you can either get the extension scooped or rework your technique, or you can see if moving your hand back away from the extension still gets you the sound you're looking for. But the biggest thing is you're noticing it, so that's the first step to sort of see if there's a way you can get it out of your playing. Yep. Yeah, I think that'll change over time. You say that you just move your hand over a little bit, but then tend to drift back. If you're drifting back because that's really the sweet spot in the sound of the instrument, and you find yourself not using those frets up there, then you could consider getting it scooped out, so that or chopped off. That might be a little funny. I've thought about just getting this chopped off, but I think it's a little too. Because sometimes I do want to play up. You get a nice sound. You get a really kind of soft, but you do get the pick click. I've thought about getting that worked on, but I can't quite get myself to do it because it would affect kind of the look of it might not look quite right to my eyes. Jim says, hello from Western New York. Will you ever do a video series about how to play by ear? That's a good question. If you have specific things you'd like to see in terms of lessons on that stuff, shoot me an email with some specifics. I think kind of in a way, every tune video I do is about learning how to play by ear. But if you have specific things that you're finding you need to work on, I'd love to get some thoughts on that. So yeah, shoot me an email. It's MandoLessons@MandoLessons.com. Tell me what you're kind of looking for in that kind of series. I'd love to do that sort of thing. I'm just not entirely sure what it would entail and would love some input. Maybe I'll play an old time tune. I'll play this tune. I can't remember what it's called right now, but I'll think about it. I think it's called Old Aunt Ginny with her nightcap on. can't remember the second part of that second tune. Anyway, the first tune is Old Aunt Ginny with her nightcap on. Interesting tune name. And the second one, I wish I could remember the B part, but it just kind of popped into my head at the end there. I'll try to figure it out for next time. Hey, Chip, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'll do it. It's on my list of lessons to make. You can also look at it. I think I was doing it in the right key. I don't actually know it super well, but I'll work together a version of it and try to get it up on the website. I'm feeling. I don't know if anyone can quite tell through the live stream here, but I broke an E string last night, so I'm down to one E string. It's kind of throwing me off. It always feels very weird to me to only have one string. I didn't have time to change it. Went to a concert last night. Super fun. It was half the Foghorn String Band. It was Sammy Lind and Nadine Landry. They played out kind of a really small town and super fun. They did a couple sets of music, and then Nadine called a couple square dances and got all the musicians in the room to get up and kind of be the square dance band. And it was all unamplified, so I was playing too loud and broke the E string. But I'll get another one on. It's just kind of throwing my fingers off a little bit. Clint from Northeast Georgia says, "Can you play a little bit of Redhaired Boy? Having trouble with the speed. Thanks." Yeah, definitely. I'll certainly do that. And maybe I'll tie this in. Recovering Bassist says, if someone says, "Can you play that song you just did in A instead of G? Can you do it?" I'll say yes. I can't. For the most part, I can. I can usually do it more or less successfully on the fly. It definitely depends on the key. You know, if I'm going from G to A or D to A, if I'm going from a common key to another common key, I can do it. If somebody says like, "Oh, can you do that tune that you just played in A? Can you do that in G sharp?" I'm going to have a little more trouble just kind of pulling that out on the fly. But it's a great exercise to do. You know, especially if you've learned a couple dozen tunes in each key, in like G and D and A and E and C, you'll start to have a sense of sort of what strings are available to you in those, or what frets are available in those keys. And you can sort of, I think the hardest part is really just getting those first couple notes. So I'll play Redhaired Boy. I'll start in the key of G, which is not the key it's in, and then I'll go to the key of A and see if I can just do it. I've never tried to play Redhaired Boy in G, but I'll give it a shot. So I think, and I'll even walk you through sort of how I do it. The first part, like I said, is the hardest part is just getting those first couple notes. So I'll start in A. So then you got to find those first couple notes. bit of Redhaired Boy, and I wasn't getting all those notes in G, but I was kind of getting the sense of the tune anyway. The sun is going in and out behind the clouds. I hope it's not getting too dark for you. I noticed that this side of the room is kind of disappearing into darkness, but it seems like I'm still bright enough. But let me know if I'm too dark for everybody, and I'll bump up the light a little bit. All right, so yeah, there's a little bit of Redhaired Boy and a couple keys, and that's again, give that a try. Take a tune like your Redhaired Boy or whatever you're working on. See if you can move it from G to A or A to G or A to D. Sometimes you'll run out of strings, or a different, even if it's like an A tune that's really high. See if you can bring it down an octave. And see if it works. It's not always going to work, but it's good practice. It's a great way to kind of learn the fretboard a little bit. All right, catch up with the chat here for a second. Steven says, bust that Kentucky out because you broke a string. I don't know how in tune it is, so I'm going to avoid that. Well, we'll see. I might pull it out at some point, but I bet it's super out of tune, and I'd be spending half the time tuning it. Peter says, speaking of broken strings, any insight on string gauge? Yeah. So what I recommend, again, anytime I talk about gear, not sponsored or anything, I buy it all. I have my own preferences. I only know so much. Things like that. I recommend people try D'Addario or D'Addario. I don't know how to say the brand name. They're now EJ74s. They're just the medium gauge phosphor bronze strings. I love them. I use them on a lot of mandolins. On this mandolin, I actually use EJ75s, which is just a slightly heavier gauge. I think I play pretty hard, and I find that sometimes if I'm using lighter gauge strings, I kind of overwork the strings, and the mandolin doesn't quite sound as good. So I use heavier gauge strings at that for that reason. But I think trying out different brands and gauges of strings is a great way just to see what works on your instrument. Most sets of strings are less than $10 unless you get into like flat wounds, things like that, or elixirs. But give them a try. You can get a very different sound out of your instrument just from using different strings, different picks. So it's worth some experimentation, I think. Mike requests Sal's Got Mud Between Her Toes. I've played that one. I can never remember how it starts. But I'll try to work that one up. I've got requests to do that one on the website. See if I can get to that at some point. It's one I follow, but I don't know off the top of my head. What popular songs is only played with mandolin? You can play anything on the mandolin. I think some like classic recordings that have mandolin in them are like Maggie May by Rod Stewart, in terms of like pop songs, or oldies, I guess at this point. Or Battle of Evermore from Led Zeppelin. Those are kind of big classic ones. But really, whatever you want to play the mandolin on, go for it. It's a very versatile instrument. There's always room for more covers, like more songs you can cover with a mandolin. It's great. Covering Bases says, how common is breaking a string for me? I almost never break a string. I can't remember the last time I broke a string while playing mandolin. I break tenor guitar strings. Not infrequent. I break maybe like a couple a year. I don't know why this one broke. I did notice that when I broke a string, or when I put these strings on, they were a little corroded. So I don't know if they were a little old to get. They were just a little. They had a little like kind of black corrosion on them from the get-go. I think it broke at the nut. Whenever you break a string, or whenever I break a string, I always look where it broke, because that can. If you are always breaking strings in the same place, that can be a good thing to look into, because it could mean I have like so it broke at the nut here on the E string. It could mean I have some sharp little bit of the nut that's kind of cutting into the string. It could have just been a fluke. I'll give it one more try, and if I break another one, I'll look into it closer. But I was also playing really hard, just trying to be heard and trying to make it so the dancers could hear the music. But I would say I break a mandolin string once every couple of years, unless there's something like wrong with the instrument. Chip says, I read tab, but not so great on standard notation. Several Texan mandolin players talk about how much benefit there is to transcribing to standard notation or tab. What do you think? I don't know if this is a question. I'll just answer both questions I'm seeing here. I think maybe the first question is like, is it worth learning standard notation? I think it is. I think in terms of like the importance of skills in terms of like learning music, I think learning by ear is the most important because it doesn't require any music, and anything you can hear you can translate into your brain with enough practice and then out through your fingers. Second up would be standard notation, reading the dots. And then third would be tablature. Tablature is great because it's very, very kind of straightforward. You just put your finger down on the fret that the number tells you to do. But you give mandolin tablature to a flute player, and they can't do anything with it. Whereas if you can read standard notation, you've got a much wider catalog of music to learn from and to read. That said, there is, mandolin can be good for kind of fretboard mapping, like those FFCP. I've talked about in the past. Jazzmando.com has some great kind of fretboard mapping exercises with closed position scales. And for that sort of thing, it's great to have tablature so you can see sort of where on the neck you are. Or if you're playing something like banjo, it really makes sense to learn banjo from tablature because there's so much going on with the notes that you can sort of see chord shapes a little easier. And I guess the second question that I saw there is, what is the importance of transcribing music? I think it's really a great thing to do. Especially if you're really drawn to a solo or a tune, take the time. It's not gonna be easy, at least at first. Go take it, slow it down to like 10% of its original speed, and just get all those notes, write them out. Whether it's tab or standard notation, try standard notation if you want to get better at that. I learned tab first and then learned to read standard notation. And whenever I write out tunes for the website, I always force myself to write them out in standard notation. Because I think I still, I've spent more time reading standard notation now, but because I did tablature first, it really kind of locked my brain into that way of thinking. And now it's easier for me to read tab. But so I'm always constantly sort of trying to get myself to read music. I'm not an expert music reader by any means, whether it's tab or standard notation. Yeah, transcribing solos or tunes is super helpful. It's great practice. Your music will benefit from it immensely. How many times did I just go through Redhaired Boy? I think I did 2 in the key of G and 2 in the key of A, but I can't remember anymore. Yeah, Recovering Bassist says, it's always been weird to me how some songs just sound better in a certain key. Yeah, that's one thing that I do sometimes, especially if you're playing with a singer, getting the song, getting the instruments in a key, and sort of getting the song into a key where the singer is going to sound best is going to really make everything come together. Sometimes I play in a group where I play tenor guitar and my friend plays bouzouki, and we both just kind of capo to wherever the tune sort of seems to ring out the best at that particular moment, because we're the only two playing and our instruments are very kind of capo friendly, so we can just sort of be like, oh, does this sound good in B flat? No, how about B? No, how about C? And not have to change the fingering. Yeah, it's nice to find that kind of sweet spot for a tune. Cool. Dylan says his Eastman came with J75s, but he put 74 flat wounds on. I haven't tried those yet, and it sounds more mellow for Celtic. Yeah, especially the oval holes. Flat wounds can be nice. I use 74s on my old Gibson oval hole. Juice says, what should I have for dinner? Some kind of cabbage meal, maybe with some sweet potatoes, a sausage, and a glass of grapefruit juice. I have no idea. I would say look in your fridge and see what looks appealing. Yeah, Losing My Religion, REM, is another classic pop song with, I say pop song as someone that plays traditional music, and just everything else is kind of pop in my brain. There's probably a better word for it. But Losing My Religion by REM, classic contemporary mandolin usage. If strings aren't corroded and stay in tune, will you still change them on a regular schedule? Not really. It really depends on how I play them until they don't sound good anymore, or they start not really keeping in tune properly, or they get corroded. It can really vary widely. You know, like I put new strings on this a couple days before going to Ireland, so it's been 4 weeks, and I broke a string. I don't know why. And they're also pretty dead just because I think also, you know, I was by the ocean, which can maybe have, I guess I'm by the ocean here too. But, you know, different climate can wear through strings differently. It was really hot. I might have been sweating more. Just the amount I was playing, you know, 4 or 5 hours a day, sometimes more. And, you know, that's going to wear out your strings quicker. I'm going to go next week, a week from yesterday. In 6 days, I'm going to go to fiddle camp I teach at. And I'm going to be there for 10 days. I'm going to put on a set of strings before I go. And I'm probably going to have to change them when I get back, because that's like 8+ hours of playing, and it's all outside, and there's a lot of pollen, and, you know, just things get dirty quick. So that's not going to last. But sometimes in the winter when I'm, you know, just not playing as much, I'll go 2 months or so without changing strings. And, you know, that's, you know, 2 months still might sound like not very long time, but, you know, I usually play 2 or 3 hours a day probably. And if I'm playing for gigs, I can really wear through them pretty quick. Let's see, I'm going to catch up with the chat here. Yep, Recovering Bassist says, Bill Monroe never changed a string until it broke, and he always boiled strings to give him more life. I've heard of that. Especially, you know, I think bass players will do that more often. Boil your strings. Your bass strings are can be like $100 a set. With mandolin strings, I'm less worried about it. You know, they're like $5 or $6 a set. I just buy them like 8 at the time online. So I'm less worried about getting every ounce of life out of them. But yeah, you can boil your strings and clean them up a little bit that way. Gail says, glad to have you back. Glad to be back. Can you demo the basic difference between bluegrass picking and classical picking? I don't know much about classical music. I'll play a little bit of bluegrass and a little bit of a small bit of a piece of classical music, a little Bach that I know. I'll just play a kind of a little bluegrassy break. So it's very kind of rhythmic and staccato, and it's got a lot of double stops, multiple strings going at once. Classical music can have double stops for sure. You know, it's got those sort of double stops. It's going to just be a little bit like cleaner, maybe. I don't know how to describe. Etc. You know, it can be cleaner in that way, but classical music can also be more intense than that. So, there's some variation in each. Dylan says, writing tabs is difficult. I figured out the theme to Zelda by ear and can't write down in tabs. Yeah, I'd say give it a shot. Even if it doesn't come out perfectly, just like write down. Sometimes what you can do is, you can figure out where the notes are, like, 2 4 5 0 2 4 5, whatever it may be. And even if you don't get the rhythm can probably be the hardest part sometimes. But, give it a try, and even if you just get a long string of notes, that can be helpful, and then kind of start working it into more rhythmic ideas. Ronnie says, play one of your favorite tunes. I will do that in just a second. Any recommendations for books on technical studies or improvisation work? There's a book, I don't know, I don't have a lot of personal experience. Technical studies is a book called The Complete Mandolinist by Marilyn Mayer. I had that one for a little while, and it's very nice, kind of a little more classical oriented, but definitely kind of basic technique, which is really helpful regardless of the style. Mandolin for Dummies is great and really well set up. Improvisation, there's a book by John McGann that's like Variations for Fiddle Tunes or something like that. I've never looked through it myself, but I've heard enough people say good things about it that I would recommend checking that one out. That's a great question for the Mandolin Cafe forum. Somebody over there will have lots of good ideas on that one. Did carrying the mandolin on the plane and the altitude affect it much? No. I think carrying it on the cabin's under pressure, so I think even if it was like much of an altitude difference, I think it's more just temperature and humidity. But no, mandolin was totally fine. As far as I know, that might have contributed to the breaking the string, but I wouldn't expect necessarily. Can you show intervals or arpeggios you like to train on? I'll just point out, again, FFCP through jazzmando.com. It's got all that stuff. It's got great arpeggios. I'd say it's hard to beat. That stuff's really, really dense and really filled with a lot of good exercises. Check that stuff out. All right, Recovering Bassist, thank you for the super chat. Wow, I'm falling behind on the chat here, but I appreciate the donation. Let's see if I can speed up here a little. I got to play a tune here at some point. Do you always take your Ellis with you outside? Does humidity or dry air affect your mandolin? I suppose I'm asking, do you baby it? I don't baby it. I worry about it a lot. I don't feel great about like hoping they let me bring it on the plane, but it all went smoothly. But no, I pretty much just bring it everywhere, play it hard, and I take good care of it. But the instruments are pretty sturdy, and I think like understanding, like finding the right balance of like, taking care of your instrument, but also not babying it so much that you never play it is going to be helpful. Juice says, I'm playing mostly Celtic and Irish tunes. How hard is it to switch to bluegrass with double stops from time to time? If you're interested in bluegrass, I'd say just jump right in. You'll find the similarities and the differences kind of easy enough. But you'll start to understand. I'd say just jump in and try to play some bluegrass. It's not going to sound exactly what's in your head at first, but that's kind of the only way to do it, is just jump in. What can really help sometimes is, take like a month and say, all right, I'm only going to play bluegrass for this 1 month, rather than kind of dipping your toe in occasionally. Really just jump in head first for a month and just play a lot of bluegrass and listen only to bluegrass and really see if you can get that into your playing. And then you can always go back and, play a bunch of Celtic music after that. But, you know, really focusing on it for a month can be really helpful, and you'll learn a lot that way rather than just from time to time. Giving it a try. What was the classical song that I did? I did, it's the prelude to Bach's first cello suite. I also did, I forget what this one's called. That's, Tempi de Borea or something. It's from one of the Bach solo violin partitas or sonatas. I can't remember which. What software do you use to create sheet music PDFs? I use a program called MuseScore, MuseScore, all one word. It's free. It's any platform. It's I highly recommend it. It's great. It does everything I need it to do. You know, getting Finale or Sibelius might be better if you're into more complex stuff, but for writing out to fiddle tunes and getting it into tablature, that's plenty. MuseScore is plenty powerful for me. Okay, yeah, cool. Dan's backing me up on the Bach stuff. Thank you. Yep, that was the Bach cello suite. Hi from Maine, Yellow Rose Farm. Great to see you here. Okay, yeah. The website I mentioned is jazzmando.com, and the PDFs are FFCP. It stands for four finger closed position. There's great PDFs over there. Check them out. Can you play something from the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Technically not really because of copyright reasons, but I can maybe play a little bit of a traditional song that I also do. I'll do a little Man of Constant Sorrow. Constant Sorrow, a great old classic traditional tune. Gail says, back to picking. I find I'm picking one string or the other but not both. What am I doing wrong? It seems like classical picking is more focused on striking both strings, maybe. I don't know much about that. I get that question a lot. I've just never really thought about it. I just think of it being a four-string instrument. I don't know whether I'm playing both or one. Probably do a little bit of everything, but yeah, I don't know. Unless you mean double stops, I guess. You know, in terms of like playing up a string, I'm just sort of pretending it's one string. But if you're thinking about like double stops, that's sort of a different thing that you find more in bluegrass. There's a double stop series on my website under the Technique and Fundamentals section of the site. Dan, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate the donation. Says, I've been learning Road to Monalia and wanting to do an accompaniment, but the session has nothing and I can't make out the accompaniment anywhere. Have you heard it played in a session? I've never heard that tune. Where I shoot me an email with it. I'd love to hear it. And maybe I can help you out there. But I've never heard of the tune. I've never, at least not by name, or I can't remember the name. I might have heard it and heard the name and then forgotten, because that's how my memory works. Sorry, I can't help you out there. Gail says, can you play Bring a Little Water, Sylvie? I know that song a little bit. Are you thinking like, bring a little water, Sylvie? Bring a little water now. Bring a little water, Sylvie. Every little once in a while. Sylvie come running, bucket in her hand. I'm gonna bring you water just as fast as I can. That's the only version of that I know. It might be different. I think it's just old. I don't know much about it. I think it's just old traditional. We'll find out if the YouTube police say it's copyright. But oh yeah, I don't know if there are tabs or standard notation anywhere on that one. I'd ask on the Mandolin Cafe forums. Can I play 9 Pound Hammer? Great song. Yeah, I've got a lesson for 9 Pound Hammer on my website under the songs section. Okay, so Gail was talking about right hand. Yeah, I don't, in terms of like how many strings you're hitting. I've always just thought about it as one string. So I don't know whether I'm hitting both strings or just one. I would say probably doing a little of both. I wouldn't worry too much about, I could be totally, this could be something that people know a lot about, but I've never thought about it. Maybe other people can chime in on the chat. When you play the mandolin, are you thinking about going through both sets of strings, or are you thinking about hitting particular string, like a single string in the chorus? Maybe somebody can help you out, but I just never really thought about it. 9 Pound Hammer, great song. Nine-pound hammer, it's a little too heavy for my side, for my side. Roll on, buddy, roll so slow. How can I roll when the wheels won't go? It's a long way to Harlem, it's a long way to Hazard, just to get a little brew, just to get a little brew. Roll on, buddy, load of coal. How can I roll when the wheels won't go? 9-Pound Hammer. It's a great song. If you haven't learned it or you don't know it, it's on my website under the song section. I got a whole series on how to play the chords, how to sing the melody, how to play the melody, how to take a solo over it, variations, things like that. And catch up with the chat for a second here. Cool. Dylan says MuseScore even has a version for Linux. Yeah, they seem pretty with it. So it's nice that they're available for everybody. Cool. Thanks for sending that to me, Dan. Yeah, jig picking is Dylan says still working on jig picking. I just put out. Did I just put out a lesson, or is it coming? I can't remember. Check my website. I've got either I just put out or is going to come out a lesson on. No, I'm pretty sure it's out. Yeah, jig picking exercises. It's in the technique and fundamentals section. It's also near the top on if you look at most recent lessons, it's like 3 or 4 down. That should help you out a little bit, because yeah, it's definitely something you gotta kind of work towards. If it's not always the most natural thing, but once you get it under your fingers, it's really worthwhile. It really helps the feel of the songs to get jig picking under your fingers. Cool. Awesome. Glad everyone's enjoying it. Well, I think I've caught up with the chat here, so maybe I'll play another tune. But keep them rolling in, and if I've somehow missed yours, let me know, and I will re-answer it. Let's see. I'll play a tune. How about a little bit of... Play a little bit of a tune that I learned from... Actually, it was one of my Patreon supporters pointed this tune out to me. I really like it. It's called The New 5-Cent Piece. I think it's on an Adam Steffi record, but it sounds like this. There it is. New 5-Cent Piece. There's a bunch of tunes by that name, but I think Adam Steffi did a version of it. There's some that don't sound anything like that, but one of my favorites. Cool. Yeah. People seem to like that one. request to do it as a lesson. Yeah, I'll add that to my list here real quick. Do, do, do. Come on, load it up. Trying to do too many things at once here, and the internet's slowing down on me, but okay, here we go. New 5 cent. Cool, Andrew. Thank you for the super chat. Sorry you missed it as well, but if anyone either can't be here one week or can't see the whole thing, you can always watch these. They're always archived, and you can watch them after the fact. There's now a link on my website over on the left-hand side underneath the donate button that you can get a link to the sort of the archive of all the old lessons. They'll be there waiting for you. Yeah. Well, I got a couple more minutes here, so if anyone's got a last-minute question, throw it out there, or I'll have to wait till next time. But maybe I'll just play one more tune and see if any more questions roll in, but then call it a day and get out in the sunshine. It's a nice day out there. Gotta get out in it, and if it's nice where you are, do the same. Bring a mandolin out and play some music outside for some people. Let's see. Turkey in the straw. Yeah, I can do that. Maybe. There it is. All right. There's a little turkey in the straw. Thanks for the request, little Yellow Rose Farm. I feel like there were a couple of little comments in here. Never look at the fingerboard. Yep, I don't do a whole lot. I do occasionally. I just did a lesson on my website not too long ago called Don't Look Down, where I talk about that. Check it out. I've got a few thoughts on that. Stephen Says, Wild Bill Jones. Heard several do it. Billy Strings and Don Julin. Any way you can do a lesson? I can look into that one. I've heard it. I don't have a specific version that I do myself. I bet somebody on Mandolin Cafe could point you towards maybe a resource on that one quicker than I'd be able to get a lesson out. Peter says, any tips or guidelines for kicking off a bluegrass tune? I mean, simply enough, just pick a little double stop or chord in the key you're doing it in. So if it was like Turkey in the Straw, you could do, or you could pick a little bit of the melody. Like maybe the last line of the melody, and then bring everybody in, or just a little kind of shuffle, or just 4 potatoes. Things like that. Listen to whenever you hear somebody kick off a tune, listen to what they're doing and kind of see if you can categorize it. Is it a lick? Excuse me. Is it a lick that they're just kind of, it's unrelated to the tune? Is it a little bit of the melody? Is it just a little shuffle on a double stop or a chord? Things like that. And see what people are doing and see if you can pick up some of those ideas for yourself. All right, thank you all so much for another great Mando Lessons Live. I'm not going to be here for the next 2 weeks, unfortunately, because I'm going to be at Fiddle Camp. But July, end of June, I'll be back, and then July is looking much more open. Cool. Thank you all again, and have a great day. If it's sunny where you are, get out in it, and see you all again soon. Have a good one.